Hi everyone and welcome to this video. My name is Phil and I'm a senior lecturer in astrophysics at the University of Lincoln. Now I've done a few videos on planet formation, so like how giant planets form, how terrestrial planets form, and how planets kind of get started in their formation process kind of in these circumstellar disks. Now what I'm going to cover in this particular video is that a lot of our planet formation theories have kind of holes in them. They don't work very well, and when we kind of model them, we just don't get the planets forming in the right sort of time frame because there are barriers to them. There are barriers to certain sizes as these protoplanets or these young planets are growing that stops them, and we need to kind of consider some additional physics in this disk to allow them to get past these barriers and continue to grow. So that's what we're going to cover in this particular video. So basically, just to kind of recap really, planets form in these circumstellar disks or these protoplanetary disks around young stars. So the star is forming at the center. The star is not currently a star while the planets are forming. It's a protostar really. And once the actual star has formed, it's now in the main sequence, then what it will do is it will disperse the gaseous component of the disk, and then planets essentially stop forming, and that's kind of like their limit really, their time frame in which they have to form. So we kind of know roughly how long planets need or what they have available to them to actually form. Now there's a few different models for giant planet formation, which we're not too fussed about for this particular video. I've done a separate video on this. Well, actually, I've done a couple of videos on this because they can form with the core accretion model. So what happens here is they kind of form in the disk. They form from the kind of like accumulation of dust, the accretion of dust, which then, once they get to a certain size, they then develop a gaseous envelope, and they get kind of like these, well, significant gas atmospheres, which makes the gas giants really. And that takes, a considerable amount of time to do that, and they need to be in a certain location in the disk. Now, the disk instability model is kind of how like binary stars form. So you get a sudden kind of collapse of the disk from gravitational instability, and they can form quite quickly with that. Now, we're not interested in that. We're more interested in kind of like the beginning part of the core accretion model, where we actually grow the core of a giant planet or a terrestrial planet, and it's there where we hit these barriers at the smaller sizes that we kind of need to overcome. So, a few barriers here. So what this is here on the actual right hand side is kind of like the size or type of planet that it is. It starts with dust. You get planetesimals, which are like protoplanets, younger planets. Then we get our terrestrial planets, and then gas giants, and then a rough timeline. And you can see that it's not linear. You have kind of points where you get like a runaway growth. So once they get to a certain size, they'll gravitationally attract each other, and they grow quite quickly. The lower end, the smaller size, it's much slower, and then once they get to the bigger size, then the material near them is depleted and they slow down again. So the bit we're interested in for this video is that early part when the particles are quite small, but before they've kind of really reached the planet phase. And there's a couple of barriers there which do limit their growth, or they basically halt their growth, and we've got to get past those. So what happens here is, because they're in a gas disk and the gas actually orbits slightly slower than the dust particles, because there's a pressure gradient there which slows the movement of the gas. So particles that are orbiting in this gas disk experience a gas drag. Now what that does is it makes them lose angular momentum, and they move radially inwards. Now over some time frame, depending on the size of the particle, then it will end up plunging into the star. Now again, in our models, they plunge into the star quite quickly. We do have some additional physics which can stop the radial movement, because we know planets don't plunge into their star. Again, I've done a separate video on that one. But essentially, they get this gas drag, they move radially inwards. So again, we need to get past this barrier for growth before they move too far inwards, where there's little material to actually form as well. So it gives us a strict timeline or time scale in which these planets need to form. And as I said at the very beginning, once the star becomes, well, once the protostar becomes an actual star because it's now on the main sequence, it's now generating energy in its core from fusion, and that will, once it's kind of got like that stellar wind from that point, it's going to disperse the gas from the disk. So we know that from the radial drift and the star becoming an actual main sequence star, we have a finite time scale. So we're working with that. We've got to overcome these barriers. So depending on the size of the particle, they can be more or less coupled to the gas. They experience greater or less drag. What does that mean? Well, it means that a particle is experiencing a gas drag, slows it down, and it will then orbit with the same speed as the gas. That is then coupled to the gas. And again, the peak size that they couple to and in spiral rates is around about 0.01 to 10 meters, and the drift timescales for radial movement and in spiral to the star is about 100 years, so very, very fast. And that's the sort of size where that peaks at due to this kind of gas drag. So we know this is kind of occurring because they're moving in these gas disks. But whilst all that's occurring and they're growing at the same time, they're going to hit a couple of barriers. The two main ones, the first one is the bouncing barrier. So what happens here is they're transitioning from sticking to each other. So you've got all these particles in the disk and they're colliding. At the very small scale, they're moving due to kind of like Brownian motion. They're not gravitationally attracting each other. They are randomly moving and they're encountering other particles of a similar size, and they stick and they grow. But once they get to like millimetre size, centimetre size, they actually start to bounce. They don't stick. So they've got enough kind of kinetic energy that they bounce off each other. And your growth kind of really slows down at that point. You've then also got fragmentation. So at some critical velocity, once they get faster and faster, and also depend on the composition of the particle as well, they're going to fragment instead of actually grow. So they will actually destroy each other, which again gives you a kind of barrier that's stopping them from growing any bigger. So we've got a bouncing barrier and a fragmentation barrier. Now there are various different routes in which we can overcome this. The four main ones I'm just going to kind of point out here are going to be like turbulent eddies. We've got pressure bumps in the gas disk, zonal flows, and streaming instabilities. And all of those can help elevate the size of the particle above those particular barriers, and then they continue to grow, and then they get runaway growth once they're a certain size, like kilometre sort of size. So we need to trap the particles kind of in groups so they can kind of grow and not kind of bounce off each other or destroy each other. And the first way is these turbulent eddies. Now I've got a graph there which is basically kind of like the size of the eddy and the energy involved and things like that. Now at the smallest turbulent scale, that's what we're interested in for these small particles, and these can actually trap the particles in these very small eddies in the turbulent gas disk. So what happens here is the small particles are expelled to the high pressure regions between the eddies. So you've got like all of these different turbulent eddies in the gas disk, and around the outside of those you've got high pressure regions. The particles are then kind of like pushed out into those. They get the density of the particles gets greater, and they're able to then kind of grow and go past the barriers essentially. Now, the interesting thing about these turbulent eddies is that the particles, or the trapping of the particles, is most effective when the eddy size matches the stopping time. So the stopping time is when the particle actually couples to the gas, so when it moves with the gas. So for example, smaller particles are going to couple quicker, so shorter stopping times. They're going to actually work better with the smaller eddies. Bigger particles, larger eddies. And obviously if you've got a turbulent flow, it's going to be a mixture of all different sizes there. So smaller ones is what we're interested in for these small ones. And this is just kind of like an example of the larger scale ones. So instead of like the turbulent flow, if we've got a planet already in the disk, it can actually distort the disk itself, and it can create these kind of large scale stable vortexes. So the planet is the red circle there. You've got these spiral density waves, which are the blue lines, but also these grey regions are these large scale vortexes, and they can trap particles. So they actually collect the particles inside their vortex, and then you can again go above the actual barrier. And this is from a simulation showing the surface density. So the density inside the vortex for gas and dust, increases quite significantly, and that's where you're then going to get these particles growing beyond the actual bouncing and fragmentation barriers. And the next one is what's called zonal flow, or pressure bumps, really. And here what you've basically got in the gas flow is you've got a super Keplerian velocity, which means that actually the gas is flowing faster than the dust particles, which would be your Keplerian velocity, and then you have a sub-Keplerian velocity on the other side where it's orbiting slower than the actual dust, and that causes like a pressure bump which can trap the particles in the same way that those kind of turbulent eddies might do as well. So in that center part there, you've got this kind of pressure bump that's trapping your particles. We can overcome that barrier basically. Now, an example of these zonal flows can be seen in Jupiter's cloud structures, which I'll show you in a minute. But just to give you an idea here, we've got a graph showing the pressure versus the distance, or the radial distance of the disk from the central protostar. And you can see where the super Keplerian velocity would be, the sub Keplerian velocity, and then you get this pressure bump kind of in between them, which is trapping your particles. So the trapping of particles happens at this pressure maxima. And here's an example of kind of zonal flow in Jupiter's cloud structure. And you can see actually that you've got different flows there. And if this was a gaseous disk where these planets are forming, you'd get the trapping in between those different zonal flows. Now, the last one is streaming instabilities. So what we have here is we'd have small initial clumps, and what they would do is they would increase the orbital velocity of the gas ever so slightly, and this reduces the local drag in the area of where those particles are. It reduces the radial drift, and then you get an area essentially where you're able to overcome the barrier again because you've got less drag, less drift, and this is known as streaming instabilities. So what happens here is these clumps are then joined by faster drifting isolated particles. So they then join them, they then grow into them, well, not grow into them, but it allows the particles to kind of grow. Again, we're elevated above that critical size to get growth beyond the barriers. And here's kind of some simulation to show how it would actually work. So you've got your streaming instabilities on the left there, and after a few orbital periods or some time, then you can see those particles growing. Now, the interesting thing here is once they get big enough, you end up with gravitational collapse, but you also end up with binary objects. So out in like the Kuiper belt and the outer part of the solar system, we have a lot of asteroids and objects there that are binaries. So Pluto and Charon are actually a binary system, and streaming instabilities is a way of actually producing this because they form in these filaments. As the gravitational instabilities cause collapse near each other, they end up in like a binary orbit, and the outer part, like the Kuiper belt, we would expect to find a good amount of binary objects, which we do, and that's mostly from this particular process there. But again, it's a way of elevating us above those particular barriers. So with all of those mechanisms included, then we can get the planets growing in the right time frame before that disk is dispersed, before the protostar becomes a main sequence star and disperses the disk, and also before they radially drift inwards too far where there's not enough material to actually grow a planet. So, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video or find them helpful, then do consider becoming a member of the channel. There's extra videos in the member section, but it also helps support the channel. So thank you for watching.